thanks for being here. So I'm going to give a quick little rundown of kind of what we're going to do up here, and then I'll ask my friends up here to do a little intros. So first of all, it's interesting, when you come to an event like this, I think we kind of know what we're going to talk about, but we didn't know what anybody else was going to talk about. So it was interesting just to hear from Todd with that first video on Vision Link. He was talking a lot about equipment data, right? And use the example of, driving the pickup out to the job site to find where the machine is. That's not what we're going to focus on. We're going to talk about all of the data that can come off a job site, to help with the same reasons why, the efficiency, the productivity, but not necessarily that equipment, location, fuel level, diagnostic info. So I just kind of want to level set that a little bit. So anyway, I'm John Summers. I'm responsible for the construction utility sector at AEM, so AEM, Association of Equipment Manufacturers. Thanks for the intro. We cover 5 industry sectors. Agriculture and forestry are kind of on one side, and then construction, mining, and utility falls under my area. So responsible for the strategy and a lot of the member services that we do in those areas. So obviously John Deere, member, I see Joel from Bobcat out there will be speaking later. Our members are the whole good equipment manufacturers, as well as the component suppliers. So Peter from Danfoss talked earlier. I think I heard somebody from Husco in here earlier. So kind of all that whole ecosystem that goes into the machine. So Pete.
Yeah, thanks, John. Hope you can hear me. Pete Olson. I am a senior product manager for Jobsite Automation. I sit in the precision construction team in Moline for the CNF division, construction and forestry division, and I've been with Deere. This is my 30th year. Actually, now it's hard to believe. I've spent 15 years in the ag division in a number of roles, leadership and international. I spent 9 years in the parts division, and now coming on, I guess, year 5 here, year 6 actually, into construction and forestry. And I've spent a little bit of time also in the military side on technology on the aerospace side of the business. So that's a little bit about my background. Glad to be here, and thank you, John, for bringing us together.
I'm Trey Leone. I'm with WPM Construction here locally here in Central Texas. I'm principal and CFO of the company. I've been involved in the construction industry for about 17 years now, and I've been working with the newest technology on integrations with accounting software and different apps for labor, equipment, materials, and happy to be here and talk about these subjects here. As seems as though they've been, it's been slow for the construction industry to get to where we've gotten, but hopefully we can start getting some momentum here and really push things forward here in the industry.
Because that's me. Thank you. Tom Walbach, CEO of the company Extelio, tech provider within IoT, sensors and gateways. Have spent 10, 12, 15 years in the industry on the tech side, initially with TrackUnit, well-known telematics provider, but had the opportunity to move over to this company, which is more hardware-centric, really having spent 15, 20 years of building IoT sensors and gateways, but as a project-specific solution all the time. So we have the last 2 years streamlined that across, so we're now turning projects into products, and we have launched, 14 standardized IoT sensors and gateways in 14 months. So it's been pretty rapid. But yeah, really glad to be here. And really one of the things that we focus on in our company is what more data can you get from job sites besides the machine? The machines are important, no question. But there's so much other stuff that is available to pick up. And that's where our background with the sensor technology and competence is really where we can kind of bring value to the table here. So really appreciate being on this panel. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So yeah, I don't want to completely downplay the importance of the equipment,
Nope.
The machine data, right? So maybe we'll just spend a couple minutes touching on that, just so it doesn't seem like we're ignoring it, right? So Pete, you kind of want to just touch on, maybe what Deere's doing and what your customers are needing from you from a more of the equipment data coming off the machines.
Yeah, I'll just say very high level. We in the precision construction team are really focused around, I'll say, 4 or 5 key areas. Number one is the grade management piece and continuing to make that platform, that technology across all our platforms interoperable. and making it very friendly for any customer to meet them where they're at with the technology they're using. And so we're working with a lot of the technology partners, some of them here in the room today, to make sure that our technology on factory-fitted machines works seamlessly. The second piece is job site safety. You'll probably echo a little bit of some of the CAT guys' charts that you saw up here, but job site safety is incredibly huge, particularly avoiding unwanted interactions with people and our equipment, as well as giving situational awareness what's around the machine. So things like advanced vision systems and virtual mirrors, kind of following down our smart detect path with detecting people is another key area we're working from the machine side. Autonomy, I'll just say autonomy. I think everyone kind of knows what's going on in that space. Everyone's kind of making their bets about where the industry is going to go, and we are no different. We recognize there will be these applications that are going to emerge, and we need to be ready for that. So we're doing a lot of discovery and learning at this time in the autonomy space. My area, job site automation, is also a very big piece of this, and that's taking a holistic look at customers' job site KPIs and going, how are we honestly coming together, not just as a company, but together with other partners to bring real productivity gains, productivity and efficiency gains through not just telematics, but through software and intelligence. And probably the last piece, probably the most underrated, nobody wants to really talk about the plumbing, but how critical it is to have things elegantly at a low cost connected. And so that's kind of the big pieces that we're marching in right now. So that's it.
Yeah, so I think that kind of sets the stage pretty well here, right? So I'll tell a quick story first. So I set up a prep call with these guys about 2 weeks ago, and I said, why don't you introduce yourself? And then all of a sudden it was 45 minutes later. I'm like, oh no, we used all of our good content on that.
They kicked us out of the restaurant last night.
So I think we'll hopefully remember some of that and keep going through it. But on that culture, I know you kind of focus on the 3 areas of a construction job site that are really important and where you need efficiencies at. Can you just walk through those quick before we get to...
Absolutely. So around 5 years ago, started looking into integrations and Trimble. We use Vista Viewpoint, which is a Trimble product, and they opened up their API, and there's a couple of integrators that emerged from that, Rivet being one of them, which is now Data Exchange. So we started discovering that, wow, all these things start to connect. And, that's part of the problem here in construction is you get 5, 6, 7 different systems that don't talk. Then you spend a lot of manual processes getting that information back and forth to each other. So we ended up integrating Rivet Data Exchange into our company, which ties directly into our accounting software. So from there, we started with SAP Concur with an integration for invoicing. And then some more integrators started opening up, some more software companies started showing up. And for equipment, discovered Tenna. Tenna will push job site information such as location, job, and then we'll also take your equipment fleet, push it out into an easy-to-use platform. And from there, that information of the equipment collecting hours is then pushed back into our accounting software. So with these different integrations we've been able to discover, it's definitely leapfrogged us in getting this place to a meaningful report or whatever it may be. But I would say the integration part for us has been the biggest leapfrog in technology for us. I saw the CAD Vision Link thing up there. That's a great software, don't get me wrong, but getting that information to flow amongst your entire organization is kind of been the challenge, and that's I'd say that's the forefront of what we're trying to get solved right now.
Tom, I saw you kind of perk up when he was saying pushing data, because that's basically all you guys do, right?
That is all we do. So I think I've spent a lot of time within the software telematics side, and it makes me really happy to see how companies are now opening up for external APIs, because that's going to be the only way we're going to solve challenge like what Trey is talking about. The fact that we have open APIs that can integrate with each other and different systems. And so we kind of took that whole, we made that choice like really deliberately, and we are an API first and only company, so we don't build a front end for everything on our sensor part. So, but then we are really focusing on, okay, what can we do on the other side of picking up data, and it was funny to see the 50% that was introduced by Caterpillar on idle time. We've done digital investigations in Scandinavia too on big job sites where 50% of the power consumption on job site happen in off work hours. That's just crazy. And so we started looking into what is the power consumption on job sites and how can we actually monitor that and find out about where the power goes. So that's really where we're spending a lot of time to really look into what are the other parts that will affect, especially in Scandinavia with everything on the ESG and carbon footprint measurements they need to do. That's where we see our focus.
So when you looked into that, what was some of that power consumption from?
A lot of it is actually from job site trailers, the office trailers, accommodation trailers, restroom trailers. Of course, you have a lot for the equipment container where they're charging machines over the weekend or whatever it is. But I mean, they actually found out that a lot of, these trailers, they have the lights on, the heat, the HVAC unit is running over the weekend. They're still nice and cozy there and warm. It's on a Saturday night, on a winter night, but it's always not shut off over Easter. So it's still a lot of power that's actually been used there. And it became very clear when the power prices went really high in Europe about 2 years ago.
Because that impacts the bottom line.
Right.
And like I always hear stories here, when diesel was cheap, idle time mattered less. Right. I mean, now then it kind of rose a little bit. I mean, you're still going through warranty hours and all that stuff, but I mean, it hits that that bottom line number a little more.
Yep.
So Trey, one of the things that you've kind of talked about before too is, well, I guess Tom just kind of tucked on the power consumption, right, being a cost. One of the things we were talking about last night was the people cost, right, and then understanding where labor is and when and why and.
So we were having a conversation last night that, a lot of these digital forms are just paper moved into the digital form, right? So a time card went from paper to, the iPad came out and everyone started entering their time on time cards that are digital. Well, the same problem occurs if you put it on paper, everyone got 10 hours. You put it on a digital platform, everyone got 10 hours. But did they really get 10 hours? It's funny when you look at your equipment telematics, it'll say, on the job site, the equipment had 8 hours, the whole crew had 10 hours. So it kind of questions of, were they really there for the full 10 hours? So we've been kind of going down the rabbit hole of how do we automate the labor portion of things? So when somebody walks on a job site, ping, we know they're on the job site in the time they walk off. We know when they walk off because, trusting somebody to actually put the accurate time in, and some of these guys might leave during the course of the day to where it's like, I don't remember I'll just put them down for 10 hours. So, getting the automated labor portion, I think, is very important. And there's a couple products out there that offer it. The thing is it's constantly changing. There's someone new showing up all the time. So it's when you make the jump on the software, especially this day and age, it's changing so quick that you tie into a 3-year term with these folks, and it's like year one there's something better out in year two. So making those decisions and when to make that change is important, but it's going to be I think that's going to be a major thing here because labor is one of the biggest expenses on a project outside of equipment. So getting an automated labor software is top priority for us right now.
Yeah, so those 3 expenses: equipment, material, right, and then labor.
Yes.
So I think. Do you want anything on labor there, Pete, at all? Otherwise, we can kind of transition into like material efficiency here a little bit.
Yeah, no, I just would say that, as an OEM, it's very easy for us to get machine data. What we can't do effortlessly is get the richest and the best data across every fleet asset. And then even if we can, what our customers are telling us is you need to bring together the labor piece, i.e. the person who's operating that piece of equipment and what that machine did, and then tie that into the material and then bring it into a cost piece. That really is fundamental. Once you do that, now you can start to talk to them in the language of, hey, I bid this job, I said I was going to do it for this amount, now I can actually track either daily, weekly, or monthly. This is really what my effort yielded. So I'll just leave it at that and let you keep us moving.
Actually, yeah, so let's focus on that. So John, who was sitting at my table back there, was kind of talking about the estimating and maybe using AI to do that based on other data you have. This is like an unplanned question here, guys, so if you pass, that's fine. But any thoughts on that? I mean, I feel like there needs to be so much data entered into something for it to like learn, right? But I think if the industry is helping open up that data and overlay all that stuff, we should be able to start automating some of this other piece of this.
Sure, I'll jump on this one. So with AI coming out, we need data, right, for it to analyze. And right now, labor, equipment, that's fine. There are hours. There's so much you can only do with that information. When you look at, kind of what are the next steps in construction data, I saw the backup camera, great feature. A forward-facing camera could be a very valuable thing of collecting data. Is that trench safe? What kind of pipe did that person just set in the ground? Was it a 6-inch RCP? Was it 8-inch? So gathering, production information with what it's seeing going on, that translates into safety, training, a bunch of other good things that I think the industry could use. But yeah, forward-facing camera is definitely, I think, kind of the next step. The software I use for construction equipment recently just announced they're coming out with a forward-facing camera. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot with that information right on the onset, but over the course of 2, 3, 4 years, I think, we could start learning and doing something with that information. Alerting an operator, on the onset can get a little cumbersome. So I think if, we start getting this information and then we can set AI on it and it can start learning, literally in the literal sense, machine learning. I think it's the next step in the industry.
I think it's kind of funny though, because you were talking about before digitalization into automation, right? To automate something. And it seems like now we're just moving into the point where you're using cameras and radars and stuff to also digitize the insights from the job site. But we still have to get to the automation part, which is where the real value comes, so that we can kind of skip those points and just have everything work seamlessly together. And I agree fully, that's going to take some years still before we're there. But we also talked about it. I don't think we've seen, maybe there are some companies that might be able to do this today, but do I know who that would be? That would be a pretty crazy guess, because there are going to be some really big players on the AI side, or some spin-offs from that have the capacity to kind of solve these problems using AI, but it's just so new. But I think it's going to be more rapid, and in all honestly, I don't think we've seen that company in this vertical yet.
Do you think it's a company that people know? I mean, are we thinking Google here? Are we thinking?
I mean, there was some big competitor. I mean, the construction vertical needs to be even more digitalized and even more automated. Eventually, some of these really, really big companies are going to come in and say, hey, this actually makes sense, and we can do some things because they have the muscle to put behind it. And then it's just going to be a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, so I think actually Tom and I were at a conference last week in Phoenix, and there was a talk on AI, right? And I mean, if I asked anybody in here, is it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if you heard of OpenAI or ChatGPT or something like that, I doubt anybody would raise their hand. There was, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was one where you basically entered in like whatever you wanted the song to be about, and it like wrote a song in the style you wanted. I mean, that thing has existed for like a month. So I mean, I think there can be some of these other pop-up companies that are coming into this space that are trying to understand it. The thing that I struggle with that is that, have those people actually been on a job site, and are they creating technology for the sake of creating technology versus understanding the customer pain points? Right. So I've talked about this before at a couple different things, but a few years ago it was like you can get a Bluetooth toaster that can alert your phone when your toast is done. Like, I'm cool just standing in the kitchen waiting for it, right? So it's kind of like, just because you can do that doesn't mean you necessarily need to, right? So, Pete, let's kind of talk about you mentioned like grade control and stuff like that earlier, and understanding that process and workflow and technology in that. I mean, a lot of that is to make an operator better, right? But then it also gets into the reducing rework, better use of materials, right? So can you touch on that a little bit, and then we'll talk about how the data kind of flows from there?
Yeah, so, grade control, if you look back over the last just 20 years and many of the survey houses, the tech houses that you guys know and work with have really moved that ball down the field. And I would say that opportunity has manifested itself. Just when you talk about controlling that blade with precision, eliminating additional people from the survey space, that has been a huge gain, and that's really what's drove the adoption and utilization of grade management and grade controls. You're getting better quality, you're doing it with less people and better time, and getting better accuracy. So there's a huge lesson in that. What's enveloping around it right now is, I'm going to kind of put it in like 3 steps, just to keep it really simple, is so you've got the real world, and you saw a lot of the presentations earlier here today, like how critical it is to understand the real world, the scanning technology. So we understand the real world in a lot of ways. Could be different sensors, could be ultrasonics, could be radar, could be LiDAR, scanning tools, whatever that is. But that just gives you a whole bunch of data. And now you got to really start to put that into a context. And whether it's grade control or whether it's ground penetrating radar or whatever it is, now you've got to say, how do I actually leverage this for insight of what I want to do? And that's where, we talk BIM and the digital twin, but the ultimate goal is to get that data into this digital second reality, this parallel reality that you can generate an insight from. And in between the real world sensing and the digital twin is this whole unlock opportunity that I see the whole industry is chasing after this. Us, our competitors, our peers, everyone's chasing after this idea of sensor it out, connect it, generate this data, and then automate some stuff, and then make me better. And so, we're doing this, but we're kind of getting overwhelmed with all of this data that's now around us. And that's really driving into, I think, where you were driving it in this conversation is, how do you make sense of that? And I've had the pleasure of being part of our startup collaborator organization at Deere through our Intelligence Solutions Group for the last 5 years. We've brought companies in that do, teleoperation, autonomy, companies that do safety stuff. And this year we've got a company that's, direct in the heart of the AI space, several companies in the heart of the AI space. And I've been blown away in 5 years how big that has become. I think it's moving faster than even we realize and how important it's going to be. So that's kind of how I'd set it up and say that's what's going on in the industry.
Comments on that?
No, I only have the speed part. I fully agree. I mean, some of the things that you'd mentioned, ChatGPT and all this kind of stuff. There are things that were predicted back then. So, it's going to be 2 years, maybe at least a year. It was done in 8 months. I mean, we haven't even seen the scale. We're just looking at the surface. We're not even scratching it. What's going to happen? I don't think that's why I'm super intrigued about this situation we're in now, because it's so exciting. Because we don't know who's going to run it, how it's going to happen, and the impact it's going to have on the entire industry. Because just as you said, we're picking up all this data, but we currently don't have a system that is strong enough to by itself make sense of it all and fit it all together. And I think there's going to be somebody that comes in and kind of grabs that land, makes a land grab on that part, and I just can't wait to see how that's going to form. I know it's not going to be us, because that's not what we're doing, because I always say that the data has to come from somewhere. That's where we focus.
Putting a camera on a machine, if it takes 2-3 years for, that to be adopted, here we are 3 years behind on, collecting more information. So I think it's important that, we take the steps now to start collecting, valuable information that can be useful in the industry. But, if we're 2 years behind, AI is going to surpass us and we'll be, running from behind still. So it's exciting to see where it's all going to go. And, the whole goal is to improve the industry and our productivity. So exciting.
So Tom, let's go back to you, because we're talking about collecting all this data, right? We did a focus group, AEM did a focus group a few years ago, and we brought in probably 6 to 8 fairly larger contractors trying to understand like what their barriers to adoption of like using telematics data was. And we walked out of that meeting saying either they had old unconnected equipment or they were getting too much data and didn't know how to do it, right? So let's put aside the, now we have too much and we don't know what to do with it. Let's talk about like connecting things, right? So last night you were kind of talking about making things really simple and just getting stuff online to understand whether it's its utilization, location, whatever it is. So
Yeah. Well, without making it into a pitch of what kind of product we have, but I mean, I think it's because we come from a technology background for sensors, and we have like deep insights through the time we spent in the industry. We're able to go out and kind of pinpoint some pains in the, I mean, what kind of data you need. And one of the examples we talked about yesterday was all the light equipment. So now we're talking back to machines, but just again, a good example. Everything like small gasoline-powered gensets or pumps or what have you, the throttles for concrete. And just getting a different way of looking at that. And so connecting to the spark plug, actually just a wire around the spark plug, and we have a small Bluetooth dongle with an antenna in it, an antenna receiver. So we're actually 1 millisecond right on when the engine is running. It's a 30-second non-intrusive install, and it'll store the data and offload it to a gateway, and it gets back to the vicinity of that. And it's just a really simple way of looking at it, but it's a lot of, I mean, there's been a lot of companies trying to figure out how you could remotely get this information off of that type of device. And then we have the same for a different version for diesel and a different version for electrical machines. But the logic is always the same, getting the data to a gateway, and then that puts it in the cloud and pipes it wherever it needs to go. So just a simple way of using what's on the machine to kind of collect the data and just forward it. I think that's, but it's all about getting it in. And then from there, whatever people use it for, it's different from company to company. And I think that's where the API first approach makes sense, because what's right for Trey and his business might be a little bit different from another company. So they're all going to have these little uniqueness about how it's going to be. Maybe Trey, you can talk about that, what the challenge is. How do you make that fit with actually what you need?
Yeah, no, it's a challenge, and I think over time it should hopefully get easier. You have a lot of data siloing over the past, say, 5 years has happened. It's we don't want to share this information with them. We don't want our information flowing over here. So, that's where Vista has been very powerful for us on actually aggregating all this information with their open API of, how do we get, equipment data, and how do we get the labor data, and how do we get a streamlined flow for material invoicing automated. So it's streamlining these processes and figuring out the best way to do it. And it's changing by the minute of like, oh, this is the best way to do this. In 6 months, I might say, oh, no, this is the best way to do this. So it's constantly changing. And for construction companies, it's tough because you're having to make these decisions on committing to these things. And it's expensive, and you want it to be useful. So, those are kind of some of the challenges as owners of construction companies are going to face is, do I need this information or do I not? And the light bulb will go off of like, oh, yeah, this is useful information. The one thing we're trying to figure out now is how do we get automated production? Sure, they can put it in on the time card, but if I have my labor automated, I have my equipment automated, how can I get my production daily automated? And, at the end of the day, look at my phone and say, oh, wow, we were productive today. The feeds, I only need once a day telematic feed. Doing it every 30 minutes, I can't fix the problem in the middle of the day. It's kind of something at the end of the day, but it's the actual aggregating of the data and getting it to a meaningful place is the challenge right now.
We talked a little bit, I think, last night about like trying to incentivize, the reason for doing it at that speed, right? So you were talking about, the truck driver. Let's just say it's like almost like the Big Brother thing, like. Even back to your labor, I'm clocking in on the job site. Like I think there's a lot of pushback with individual people saying like, don't track what I'm doing. I don't really want you to monitor that. But I think we can offset that by incentivizing them with some kind of return, right? So
sure. And the challenge has been with just the employee itself is, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, a lot of people didn't have phones still. Or if they did, they weren't very good at using them. But in the age of TikTok, everyone knows how to use a phone. And so it's become more prevalent that, the phones are all over the place on the job site. Sometimes it could be hurting that idle time there too. I don't know. But so the technology's out there at this point to start collecting these things and kind of holding the employee accountable for it. So, and that's the pushback is always been the problem really in the industry. The older guys, I'm not messing with that. Well, a lot of those guys are retiring, and there's kind of a new workforce coming in. So, I think the adoption of technology should become more prevalent, and figuring out how to incentivize your guys to want to use it. If it's a time card thing, they're going to probably want to use it, right, to get their time in. But then again is, hey, you're going to be tracking me. Well, so is every other app on your phone.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, you probably registered at this hotel. There was probably like a 20-page, things that you did just scroll to the bottom and hit I accept, right? No idea what's in there. Nobody's ever read that. But that's kind of the same thing, right? It's like, I need to go through this to get something that I want. So whether it's a, person getting paid for their production that day, or a company, right, or anything like that. So,
or something becoming really a lot easier.
Yeah.
I think that's where, to your point, Trey, to get to the point where you have something automated where the operator or employee sees, oh, this is actually helping me out, right? And then the acceptance will come all by itself. I mean, then it's not going to be a problem, because if you make their job easier, and that's where we need to really focus on the value that we're bringing to make sure that this gets adopted.
And incentive-wise too, it's tough in this day and age. You have to trust all the information you're getting to have an incentive, and you hate to incentivize on information that's not true, right? So, having these automations, then you can set forth, some sort of incentive program, because you can trust the information you're getting, and it's accurate.
because you can remove that, the human touch from it, which could be the person that screws it up, right? So, it's like automate that and have that flow and get you to the whatever the final, column is, and that's what you want to really look at.
It's, we're not doing it now, but, at the end of the day, oh, yeah, we met our production. Oh, we get an extra $10 for the day, or $20 for the day. It incentivizes them to keep moving forward. But, you can do it now with, manual stuff on a digital time card and such. But, the points I mentioned, it's kind of, you want it accurate.
Yeah, I would say, when you look at how you deploy these types of solutions, these improvements, if it is not built into the customer workflow, and if it's not taking away steps that are burdensome, this paper tiger, it's almost dead on arrival. They will look at it, they'll try it, and they're going to go right back to their old ways. Yeah. And if you think about the 30-year site supervisor who is your go-to person who knows that operation better than anybody, if you're not delivering a solution in their hands that is taking away some burden, whether it's paper or whatever, they're not going to like it. Same thing with these junior engineers that are coming in that went to college wanting to design the world. But then they get stuck in a back room chasing, reports and cards. What a misery. It can be a churn of a misery. So it's one, killing that inefficiency of that paper workflow, but then also making it meaningful. I was on a job site not that long ago here, a couple months ago, where they had deployed a productivity tool like this, and it's an eight-year project. You're talking hundreds and hundreds of subs that are on there, probably, thousands of pieces of equipment moving earth in a tunneling project. And when they bid that job, the project lead there had said, I have 12 people just to track subs on dockets and time cards. And after they deployed the technology, it went from 12 down to 2. And, I asked her about the ROI, just the monthly expense of paying for something like this. And she said, look, she goes, I couldn't work without it anymore. And the reason they're willing to pay for that value is because you're taking away this burden on their back, and that's what they want. And they don't care who delivers it. It can be a big OEM or it can be a small disruptor. it doesn't matter at this point. And that's what's fascinating about this panel right here is we're all looking at this problem, but from a different seat in the park, and it's upon us now. So I do think the winner in this is going to be the best collaborators of clouds who make the stuff go behind the curtain for our customer. And those are the folks who are going to go, yes, I'm on it. And by the way, if you think you're going to innovate and bring something new, customers are pretty clear. They're not going to leave what they're doing until they see and trust in their own data with your systems that you've taken away, you've made an improvement. So maybe early on in the days, you could try software and say, oh, I'm a guinea pig, I'll go for it. I'd say it's probably going back to like grade control 20 years ago where people were not sure, doubt it, blah, blah, blah. Now I think this job site space is filling out. And I think you're seeing more commitments in different tool sets. And once they commit to how they run their business, then you have to have a really step out disruptive solution or you're not breaking into that anymore.
I feel like the office space of construction, is a little further ahead than the actual job site stuff because, the paper burdensome, eliminating office employees to, shuffle paper around. I think that's in full effect. And, adoption is slow because, like you said, they want to see the results before they commit to something like that. And I think, the job site is kind of been a little further behind on that. And I think it's now starting to take front and center. Because, at the end of the day, the office is document movement of PDF files or paper files or whatever it may be. But, the job site stuff's a lot more complex in actually figuring out how to collect these data points, how to move the stuff around is a little more complicated than the paper part.
Yeah, you think about like where a lot of the startups and the construction investment went over the last 10, 15 years. It was all that. I guess you'd kind of call it back office, right? The digitization of documents and workflow because that was a low-hanging fruit, right? It's like now we're not totally past that. I think there's always areas for improvement with that, but it's like now let's graduate from that and kind of get into this job site piece of it. So I think we have a little bit of time left. If there are any questions, I'll make one more comment while everybody raises their hand and gets a microphone here. So Pete, you mentioned I think this probably goes to without saying for this group, but you talked about whoever you were talking to went from 12 people doing that job to 2, right? I mentioned I was at a different conference last week. I don't know how many contractors, end users are in the room, but I asked the question of how many people have open positions and everybody raised their hands. So you're not eliminating those people. You're probably taking them out of those tedious roles that they don't really want to be doing anyway, right? So
100%.
Reskilling, upskilling that whole workforce, it's not displacing anybody.
No, 100%. Yeah, they see this pain point. We've all seen it in the charts and the studies, but there's a lot of administrative burden that is just unnecessary, and you can have those people helping in so many different ways, particularly young engineers who you want out there on the job sites helping solve some of the real issues that they can do right now. So yeah, you're right on the money with that, John.
Hey, do we have any questions for, I guess, anybody specifically or the panel as a whole? I know it's right before lunch. I feel like I was obligated to make that "I'm keeping you from lunch" joke. Austin.
Hi guys, thank you. On the topic of AI, where do you think it's more applicable, on the pre-planning phase, during the actual operations, or closeout?
Well, so I'm an OEM, so let me just tell you that my headspace coming into this conversation is heavily focused on contractors, kind of where we've naturally been, kind of our wheelhouse, so to say, and in that build and control the works phase, because you kind of have the design phase, you have build and control the works, then you have the operate and maintain. And, I'd say from my seat in it, I think it has absolute applicability in the design phase, pre-construction phase. No doubt in my mind. It's probably not, I'm not the best person to tell you how that should be unfolded, but I would say in the earth moving contractor, road building contractor world, we're just lighting them up with data right now, and it's going to get worse, or better maybe I should say, and AI is going to need to kind of come down and structure and make sense of all of those data pieces in a quick way. So that's my answer. Trey, you're going to look at different.
I would say, the pre-construction is the biggest, because I think that's where, a lot of conflicts arise. Once you get to the job site, that kills that productivity to where it's like, oh, well, this should have been designed like this, and then you have to send an RFI, and it could be 2-3 weeks, maybe a month, 2 months to get that answer to, it might be something as simple as, putting a 90-degree T on something, but, if they can eliminate those issues before it gets to the job site, I think that's where AI is probably the most beneficial for construction.
I think I've laid out my piece a little while ago. I think it's the whole integration part of how to get valuable data, like valuable insights out of all the data that's available. I think that's going to be a really challenging part. But I also agree, the pre-planning part is really important. But I think the whole how you run your processes, like your business part, is really going to be interesting. It's not just going to be that one project, because you're going to have similar projects. Like, you're going to have, I don't know how many projects you have going on, Trey.
Too many.
Too many. But I think there's just that many, and it's just really, really hard to find one piece to kind of oversee all of that, and you need help. And you can't hire enough people because the people are not there. So you need help from the outside. I think that's where it's going to be really interesting to find out.
Yeah, and I think starting out in the wrong foot, I'm just going to humble myself to that, what happens up front, all those things I don't see in my wheelhouse. But once you get through that planning, estimating, bidding kind of phase, you set the stage now. That's your scoreboard for the rest of the project, however long that project's going to run. So you're committed, and I'd say if you get it wrong up front for any reason, man, you're really at risk. You're kind of, your tail's in the wind. And then, but if you get it right, or if you get it wrong, whatever, now you still got to execute and perform to that scoreboard of what you bid. So it's probably all along the chain of that project until you close it out and everything's settled, and you're on to winning more bids and growing your business. So there's probably nobody's got a monopoly on it with the AI space, to be honest.
Any other questions? All right, I'll just say thank you guys for being up here. Hopefully I led this okay with a relatively broad topic, but trying to help everybody kind of understand like where the industry is going and some interesting trends to look at. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.